guys, and welcome back to the Yes Means Yes podcast. On this week's episode, we have Jake Naumcheff and Alene Nelson on to discuss using exercise as a form of recovery from trauma. As always, my name is Faith Naumcheff. I'm the victim advocate and outreach coordinator with Rape Counselors, and I'm going to let Dondra and Amanda introduce themselves real quick.
Hey guys, I'm Amanda Carpenter, and I also work at RCEA as a victim advocate and outreach specialist.
And my name is Dondra Williams. I am an intern with Baylor University, and I'm working as a rape advocate as well.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. So I'm going to ask Jake and Alene to kind of introduce themselves and talk a little bit about their background in working with exercise and, kind of like their profession, how long they've been in the industry, things like that. So Jake, if you want to go ahead and start.
Yeah, sure. So I'm the owner of CrossFit Alene, which is a CrossFit gym in Birmingham, Alabama. We're in Vestavia. And I've owned the gym now for about 2 years. But I've been in fitness and training, specifically working as a coach, for about 11 years now. So I started when I was 20 years old, just a couple years out of high school. So I've worked as a CrossFit coach. I've worked as an assistant strength conditioning coach at a high school level. I've worked as a functional rehabilitation specialist, dealing with people who are dealing with injuries, trying to get back to life, kind of like a bridge from physical therapy into, more rigorous strength conditioning. So I've done quite a bit with that. Like I said, it's been a little over a decade, and just right now trying to figure out how to run a gym during the middle of a pandemic has been a lot of fun and a lot of challenges. So that's kind of my background. I've got several certifications that I won't bore people with, but just needless to say that, I really kind of classify myself as a coach, and have been for a long time, and plan to do it for a long time as well. So I graduated from Southeastern Bible College in Birmingham, Alabama, a few years ago. I'm currently getting an MDiv through Southwestern, and just working through some of that stuff. And so, I'm happy to be on here. And first, I want to just say thank you all for having me on.
Yes, thank you. And for anyone listening, Jake is actually my brother. So this is a special podcast for me.
I probably should have led with that.
No. I should have led with it too. But and at the end, I'll have you plug your podcast too, Jake.
Okay. All right.
Hey guys, I'm Alene. I work with Dondra and Faith and Amanda as the prevention educator for RCEA. I'm also a registered yoga teacher. I had my 200-hour training 2 summers ago in Nepal. So I've been teaching for about 1.5 years now. Before that, I was practicing yoga for 6 or 7 years. And after my sexual assault, it really, really aided me in my recovery. So I'm happy to be here to talk about this today.
Okay, so as you guys know, we operate out of the Rape Crisis Center. That's what this podcast is regarding. So we want to know if either of you have had any experience with clients specifically coming to you to use exercise to combat trauma or enhance the recovery process.
So in my experience, I haven't had clients come directly to me and tell me, hey, I've been assaulted, or hey, I've had this act of violence or this crime committed against me. But I have always, after classes, had people come up to me and tell me, I had a lot of emotions come up for me in that class. Or, hey, I really realized that I was carrying this thing with me that I didn't even know was sticking with me through my practice. So for me, in my personal recovery, I used yoga a lot as kind of an anchor for myself. It was something that was a very definitive act of self-care that I was choosing to show up for myself and spend time in a body that didn't necessarily always feel like it was mine anymore, that felt different to me, that felt maybe closed off to me, to become familiar again with my body, with how I was feeling, with, how I was seeing myself in this new light after this trauma occurred. So for me, it was really imperative to my recovery that I was exercising, especially in the mindful way of yoga. But I think for other people, exercise can just be a way of showing up for yourself after you have something like this happen to you, where you're still showing that you are worth taking care of. You are not broken, you're imperfect, but you're complete, and you can still work to, take care of yourself in this easy way of just kind of moving your body and spending time not just thinking about everything that's going on, but thinking about, improving how you're feeling in this small way. In terms of preventative work too, because, working from a prevention side, I think that yoga and exercise in general are a good way to empower people, especially with yoga, where you're paying attention to how you're feeling in your body and you're learning kind of what feels good, what doesn't feel good, in an environment where you're encouraged to, listen to your body more than you listen to a teacher or listen to someone else, even who's in charge of a class. I think that's good practice for sometimes a problematic situation where you might get somewhere and you might not know how to say no, or you might not feel comfortable sticking up for yourself. Taking a time, like even just for an hour a week, to practice and like see what feels good, what doesn't feel good in your body is a good opportunity to prepare yourself maybe for a situation where, you might feel confused or frozen or not know what to do. Obviously, rape is on the perpetrator, right? It's not on you to say no. Someone should ask you and you should be able to say yes. But I think that being empowered in this way can help people stick up for themselves in situations like that where people are committing a crime and aren't respecting them.
Yeah, I very similar. I haven't had anyone come to me specifically and say, I'm looking to recover from trauma or something that's happened in my past, dealing with sexual abuse or anything like that, and be like, I want to try to use fitness as a way to do that. Like, I've never had anyone come and sit down. When we have a new member come to our gym, we sit down and we have them do what we call is like just a no sweat intro, where they come in and they sit down and they just talk to us, and we just want to figure out like, hey, what are your goals, right? Like, what brought you to us? Like, what are you looking to get out of starting a fitness regimen or whatever it may be, starting CrossFit, personal training, nutrition coaching, whatever. And I've never had anyone say that in that setting, right? But similar to what Alene said, it is one of those things where you kind of start to develop relationships with these people, right? And like they keep coming back. So your conversations gradually kind of get deeper and deeper and deeper until you do come to the realization that they have had trauma in their past, right? Like they have had something that's happened. And while maybe they weren't looking for fitness to be like, a direct thing that kind of like helped them, recover from that or wherever it may be, they find out that it really did play a big part in them continuing to be able to move forward and continuing to be able to recover from what's happened to them. And so I have had conversations with people like that, after they've been with us for 3 to 6 months or so, or even a year, and we just kind of sit down and we talk, and they open up and they tell me about kind of what's happened to them. And usually, this is definitely not me trying to be boastful at all, but they just usually end up saying like, you guys don't know how much what you're doing here is helping me. And that's something for me as a gym owner, like that really gives me a lot of satisfaction in what I do. Like it really gives purpose, and it's like we're really changing people's lives with what we do every day and playing a role in that. And so, and that covers not just, I had people say that about tons of stuff, not just, trauma or sexual abuse or anything like that, but just maybe it's a bad home life. Maybe they just, were bullied when they were a kid, that kind of stuff. And they're looking just to kind of make a change, and just, they're not really happy with where they're at in life, and they're just looking for something. And it's a great way to be able to really, in a way, minister to those people. So not a ton of experience directly, but I would say indirectly probably had a good bit. So
I know that you had mentioned earlier, because we're in a pandemic, it's gotten really, really hard. And with COVID-19, I think we've had a lot of issues with a lot of people's mental health and how that's affected their mental health. And so, you were saying, a lot of people come to you, just for exercise for lots of different things. So how can exercise be used to reduce stress or PTSD? Because we all live with stress. We all have our stress. It's all kinds of different stress. So how can that reduce it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we could go into a bunch of the scientific literature and studies that have been done proving that, you know, exercise and just physical activity in general, and really no matter what kind it is, obviously I would advocate for CrossFit or something like that. But if it's yoga, if it's just moving, going for a walk, whatever it is, that movement, is going to have a profound impact on the body and especially on hormonal balances and then as well as mental health, right? So just neurotransmitters, all that kind of stuff, right? Regulation. And so that's definitely one part of it. But I think that exercise really, I would say I have a ton of people that come to me and they're already so stressed out with whatever is going on in their life, right? Like they've got, like you said, we're in the middle of a pandemic right now with COVID-19. So people are having to worry about financial issues, like maybe they're being laid off by their job, right? Something like that's going on. They're worried about the election that's coming up, what's going to happen with that. They're stressed out because maybe their home life isn't great. Like they're having to just navigate so many different things because everything's kind of been sent into a tailspin. And what they tell me the most is that they're like, man, I'm just so happy that I have like an hour of my day where I can come in here and I don't have to think, right? They're like, I can come in here and you're going to tell me what I need to do for an hour. I'm going to come in, I'm going to get a workout in. I know I'm taking care of myself. And for them, that's their time, right? It's like my phone's put away. I'm not worried about the pandemic. I'm not worried about work. I'm just worried about working out. And we just have a really fun community of people. So they're all kind of friends here, like they hang out together on the weekends and stuff like that and do parties together. So when they come here, it's kind of like their social hour as well, right? We call it their third place. So you have work, you have home, and then everyone tends to have like that third place that they kind of spend most of their time. For some people, like if you're watching Friends, it's their coffee house, right? If you're watching Cheers, it's a bar, right? And we are kind of that third place for a lot of people that they come here and they work out for an hour, but they end up staying, they get here half an hour early and then they stay half an hour later, just to kind of be able to just get away from it all. And so I would say for me, that's the biggest one. There are others, but that's the biggest one I think that has helped people during this time, especially dealing with stress and just, being able just to get away for a little while.
I completely agree with what you said too about, when your body feels better, you mentally feel better. When you know that you're taking that time to do something to work towards your own goals or work towards, feeling healthier, that mentally has a huge impact too, because you're making that choice to take care of yourself. I think the community thing with yoga is a big thing too, when you're able to show up in the middle of a pandemic where you might be working from home, you might be doing school from home, you might have had to, go back and live with your parents instead of being in Auburn where we're located for school, and you might be isolated from your friends. Being in a room with even people who you don't know and who you don't have a lot of interaction with, like with yoga, everybody's pretty quiet, but just being in a room with other people and doing like a shared at the beginning and having the shared experience of doing the same poses at the same time, I think that's really unifying and kind of help people feel a little more at peace that, you're not alone in this time. I think specifically with yoga, reducing stress is huge because so much of yoga is being mindful, right? Like you watch your breath, you focus on not thinking about anything other than how your body is feeling, how you're moving, how the movements that you're doing are affecting your breath, what emotions are coming up, but without engaging with those emotions. So you kind of notice and see mindfully how you're feeling in your body, what you're thinking about, but then part of that mindfulness is not gripping down onto your thoughts and trying to pull them in and engage with them and judge them or comment on them. It's noticing that they're there and letting them go. And that's a huge thing that I teach while I'm teaching, just the physical movement of the poses. So much of yoga is a mental practice as well, that I think that that's huge for reducing stress. And in terms of reducing symptoms of PTSD, like I'm not a mental health professional, but, a lot of the time, some of the thoughts and memories that people have come up in classes that they've told me about have been, memories of their assault or memories of some trauma that has happened. But being constantly reminded by that outside voice and by looking around at the other people in the class with you, it can help you ground back into your body and realize that, you know, what did happen and what you're having a flashback or what you're still having symptoms of mentally isn't currently happening. I think that's really huge for some people to be able to sit with that and have those, you know, really scary feelings, but still know deep down that they're safe. I think that's huge.
So what do you think are some of the most beneficial methods of exercise to do this, to help, you know, with the stress and the PTSD?
Yoga. But I think that in a lot of studies they've done for people who have, you know, symptoms of depression, symptoms of anxiety, symptoms of OCD, running is also a huge one. I think that in yoga you get a lot of cardio, but obviously yoga is not a one-stop shop for your exercise. That's all I have to say. Just yoga.
Yeah, no, and this is kind of a cop-out answer. I don't mean it to be, but at the end of the day, it depends. So, you know, I own like I said, CrossFit is what I've done. It's what I believe in. It's what I see works for people who typically want to take care of just overall health, right? Like they just want to be as fit as they can be. They don't want to specialize in running. They don't want to specialize in like powerlifting or gymnastics. Like they want to be able to do pretty much everything, not be able to do it great, but they want to be able to do everything pretty well, right? And so that's what I would say. But at the same time, I have plenty of people that I coach that they do personal training with me, or they do remote programming with me where I write workouts for them that they do on their own or at the YMCA or something like that. It looks nothing like CrossFit, because that's what they need for the stage of life that they're in and for what they're dealing with. And I really feel like that, you know, when we talk about what kind of exercise is best to help with kind of that recovery process, mainly, I have two things to say there. The first one would be get a coach, get someone that can like really sit down and do an assessment with you and figure out what you need, right? And can really help you and guide you in that process, okay, when it comes to health and fitness. But then the second thing I would say do whatever you can that is going to be consistent, right? Like, and that's going to look completely different for different people. I have some people in the gym right now that can come here and they can work out for 3 hours every day, and they can do it consistently. That's like the half of 1% can do that, right? Whereas for me right now, with just everything I have kind of going on in life and stuff like that, if I can get in the gym 3 to 5 times a week and move for an hour, right? That's what I can do consistently. So every week I know, okay, that's what I need. That's what I need to do. And I would just really say, and you may need to start with walking half an hour for 3 times a week, right? Do that, and then make sure you drink half your body weight in fluid ounces every day. Like that right there that's a huge step for so many people, just to be able to start doing that. And they can do it, they can be consistent. And so if you're kind of on the fence about trying to find something to do, some people are kind of all or nothing people. Okay. I'm one of those people. Like I'm all in or nothing. So like I have no problem knowing that I can jump into the deep end on something and I'll stick with it. I may burn myself out like to a crisp within a couple months, but that's just how my brain works. Okay. It would be a lot better for me if I just backed off a little bit and was just like, let me think about what I can do that can be consistent, be realistic, and start with where I'm at. So, with that being said, just move. Like, don't care what you do, just move. Be moving. You're created that way. That's how your body's supposed to work. Just kind of submit to that, and then just, go on.
And will you repeat what you just said? You said half your body, drink half your, tell me what you said.
Half your body weight in ounces of water per day. Of clean
in ounces of water per day.
Yeah. So like if I weigh 200 pounds, I need to drink 100 ounces of water per day.
Okay.
That's a rough estimate. That's just what we sometimes tell people.
Right. Okay.
Well, and I think, exercise is kind of cool too, because you do have a lot of different options out there. Because like I'm not really a yoga person because I don't like the slow. I need something more like Zumba. I like the dancing, or, that's what I like. And so I think that is what's really cool about exercise. But like you're talking about, you're all in or nothing. Like I know when there's times when I get really stressed out, I'm like, okay, I got to do something. And then I get really obsessed, almost addicted to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm there. Like I was like, I'm not doing anything right now. But before, like when I was doing Zumba, I would do Zumba and then I'd go home and I'd walk and I'd ride my bike and I was like obsessed with it. But I felt really good because I felt like I was making a difference, because I felt like the whole world was spinning around. But in that moment, I was doing something for myself. Mm-hmm. And I think as a mother, I think it is very important that, and this was something I had to learn, is I think sometimes people think, oh, well, if I go to gym or if I go to CrossFit or if I go to this class, I'm taking away from somebody else or taking it away from my kids, or, you know, they feel selfish for doing that. But honestly, you're doing your children a favor because you are able to release some of that stress and doing good for yourself. So I think that's kind of important too, is that mamas out there know that, you know, it's okay to go out there and exercise and use some of those options out there to figure out what fits you to help you.
Yeah, without doubt. I mean, I tell people all the time, just like, you can't pour from an empty cup. You can't do it. And people we just, especially right now with everything going on in the world, like, you really need to be putting a priority on taking care of yourself. And like, I know there's a fine line there, right? Like that can get really selfish at times, or at least look really selfish at times. But I just think it's a huge principle, and it never fails, that when you're taking care of yourself, you can take care of other people better. And
And I also think it's important for like any age as well, because like my son does wrestling, and I saw a huge improvement just in his grades and in his mental health and in everything around his life. And he looks forward to going to, you know, workouts and conditioning. And so I've seen a huge difference in him, you know, during wrestling season, off season and all that. You just see a difference in everything. So, yeah, I think that's kind of cool too, to be able to, so that's cool that y'all, you know, do what you do.
I want to add on from my like beginning obnoxious yoga and say that I completely agree with what has been said in terms of, you know, do what works for you. If moving quickly and doing that kind of exercise works for you, amazing. Do what feels good. For me personally, just after everything that happened, I didn't feel like moving, and that's why I didn't feel like doing anything. So that's why yoga was so, I think, healing for me, because it is gentle and it is slow and it is restorative, and there is so much positive affirmation and like mental conditioning built into it, that was just like super, super imperative to my recovery. But like everybody said, and like I say when I'm teaching my yoga classes, do what feels good for you. Just because yoga is what I'm obsessed with and what worked for me, do what works for you.
That's good.
I was really just going to kind of say something that went off of what you said, Alene. I think for me, knowing, okay, maybe I was like really lazy that day. I didn't do much. I really just kind of sat around and watched Netflix. But going on like a 30-minute walk, a 20-minute walk or something like that, it makes me feel like I've accomplished something that day. Mm-hmm. So like even for survivors, maybe they're in the absolute worst of it, their recovery process. Maybe they're just dealing with a lot of depression and they honestly cannot get themselves out of bed. But being able to do something small like that will just give them kind of like maybe a sense of accomplishment. Like, okay, I didn't do this or this, but I was able to mark this off of a little thing that I did today. So I do think it's important, like Jake said, that consistency, and also like you just kind of have to do what they said, what's good for you. Don't set yourself to these super high standards. I've got to go work out 4 hours and this day, like just something simple to allow you to get some control back in your body and decide what you want to do. So, yeah.
Yeah, I really like what Alene said too about choosing to show up for herself and it letting you have control of your body. You feeling like you have some control of your body. So my question is, do you think that trauma is stored in the body? And does the body really keep score?
So the Body Keeps the Score is a book that I have not read. Jake, have you read this?
No.
The Body Keeps the Score. Okay. So
actually. I read a book that Jake hasn't read.
Faith, can you tell us a little bit about The Body Keeps the Score? Because I've heard of it, and I've heard that it's about psychological trauma being stored in your physiological body, which I'll get into. I totally agree with that, but give me a little bit of backstory.
Yeah, it's just basically this really, really smart guy, and he talks about exactly what you just said, how you may think that you're fine because you're not presenting with things, but your body, after years and years and years, still remembers everything. So, like, he talked a lot about repression, about, like, a lot of adult survivors specifically, and just kind of how, like, if you think you've forgotten, you think you're over it, you think that, it is not part of your life, but really in your body, you're holding that stress and you're still holding on to it even years later. So yeah, I recommend it to anyone. I actually listened to the audiobook and it wasn't that bad, but the guy's really smart and he has really great methods for combating that trauma after the fact. And
just think about, for example, if somebody says something to you that makes you upset, immediately you have a physiological response. You either clench your hands, you might get hot, your face might turn red, you might tense up your shoulders. Something happens that if you're paying attention, if you're in tune with your body, you notice it. When you get sad, you might feel yourself shut down. You might feel yourself get choked up in your throat. Number one, knowing those psychological cues and those physiological cues in terms of prevention can help you realize when you're in a situation that you need to get yourself out of immediately. Number two, longer term, if something has happened to you where you've been assaulted or where you've had an act of violence committed against you, you do store it in your body because that long term, think about how you would physiologically be feeling if you're being sexually violated, if you're having that crime committed against you. That stays with you. Even if you block out memories of it, it stays with you. So much of, and I'm not going to get too much into like the chakra system or any like new age spiritual stuff because this isn't that kind of podcast, but it's a lot of what I teach in yoga. So much emotion is stored in your hips and so much sexual trauma psychologically is stored physiologically in your hips. So even just thinking about, in a vulnerable position like happy baby in a yoga practice where you've got your feet flexed, pointed up towards the sky, and your hips are open. Physically opening up in that way can mentally either bring you back to a place or also, as you're releasing that tension that you've been storing in your muscles, bring back the same types of emotion, the same types of memories. I used to just sob in yin yoga classes, and it felt so good to let that kind of stuff out. And I've heard that same thing from people who have taken classes like that, who have had emotional experiences, who have come out of it and they're like, I didn't even realize that I was still thinking about this. I didn't even realize that I was still feeling this. So moving your body in that way and stretching into places that feel, tense or tight to let out that emotion is so beneficial. So is trauma stored in the body? From anecdotal evidence and from a book that I have not read, absolutely.
Yeah, I haven't read the book, and so I wouldn't know. But specifically, all I can go off of is just kind of what I've experienced personally, right? Which isn't always the best thing to go off of, but it's all I've got. So all I'll say is that in terms of, I've seen it the other way around in that I've seen people who, let's say the flip side of the coin of trauma would be something really good happening. So like they've been, athletes for like high level athletes for years and years and years. And then they take 10 to 15 years and they have kids, they get a job, they add all this weight. They kind of, just let themselves not go, but you understand what I'm saying. Then they realize, oh, wow, I've got to start taking care of myself. Those people who have had that kind of a background though, they come back like that. Like their body remembers the way that they used to feel and they used to move, and it goes back to it like it's second nature, right? So you see that there's some type of interplay there. When we talk about just the body and all that kind of stuff, like mentally, spiritually, psychologically, it's all connected. Like I really don't think there's anyone who would say that's not the case. Now, how that happens and how that works, I don't know the ins and outs of all of that, but the body without a doubt keeps score and stuff like that. And this kind of gets to a different, in terms of like dealing with stress and all that kind of stuff. I really think that people kind of have a different understanding of stress. And the way I like to explain it to people is I have to do this with some of my more competitive athletes that I have who really want to, because CrossFit, you can do CrossFit for just being fit and healthy and losing weight, and it does wonders. And then there are some people that want to take that next level where you see like people on YouTube and people on TV like doing all these crazy things to look like they're sculpted out of steel, right? So we have some people that want to do that stuff. And I always explain to them that stress is like a funnel. And what that means is everything that we have in our life that is stressful, right, kind of goes into that funnel. And what that could be is stress could look like for you, maybe you have a really big midterm or an exam coming up that you're like super, super stressed out about, right? And then we add on top of that the fact that you're only getting 4 hours of sleep a night. Then we add on top, like that's stress to your body. Then we add on top of that the fact that you're not eating enough, or you're eating crap food without enough micronutrients in it that's not even real food. And then we add on to it the fact that you're dehydrated because all you're drinking all day is caffeine to stay awake, right? Add on top of that. And then they want to come to me and they want to say, hey, I need to be training 4 hours a day in the gym to be able to get to where I want to go, right? Training is a stress. Like when you're training to compete, it can be a stressor on the body. And if we try to add that into that funnel, it just overflows to a point to where the body can't keep up, right? So if we kind of take that same analogy, if you're coming in, some people are coming in with a funnel that's really empty. Other people are coming in because of what's happened in their past, whether that be trauma or, whatever it is. Maybe they're not working with an empty funnel. Maybe their baseline is working with a 3/4 full funnel. And so therefore what they're going to be able to handle and what their body's going to be able to recover from is going to be much lower than someone else. And that's okay, right? It can still help and it's still going to do wonders. We just need to, I think that gives us an insight into how stress is going to have an interplay with everything that goes on in our lives. So, like I said, I haven't read the book, but Faith, I love you. I probably won't read the book, but I'm sorry. I have too many on my shelf right now that I need to get to. But
that's fair. That'll just be my claim to fame that I read a book you haven't about exercise and trauma. And
there you go.
So we've kind of touched on this a little bit in answering that last one, but there may be some other specifics you guys have. But what are the benefits to exercising as a coping mechanism or recovery method? And can there be negatives to this? So I think Jake kind of hit on that a little bit within his last question, last answer. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'll just reiterate some stuff that I've said earlier too, that exercising is a way that you're showing up for yourself, right? When maybe you don't feel like it, maybe you don't feel like you're worth showing up for, but you are worthy and you are whole. But I think that exercising, taking that small amount of time out of your day to do something for yourself can have a big psychological impact, even beyond the psychological impact of like getting your blood moving, getting your endorphins flowing, and feeling physically better and more energized from exercising. I think the negatives to anything would be, there's everything with moderation. So if you're trying to replace therapy or mental health care or anything with going to the gym or with going to yoga, that's not going to work. There needs to be a balance. You can't just exercise yourself whole. There needs to be a balance in terms of where you're getting psychological support to, not just distracting yourself with exercising, because that can very quickly, especially with victims of sexual assault who can turn to, eating disorders, substance use disorders, that kind of thing. You want to be careful that you're not overdoing it and that you're doing it in a way that's healthy and that feels good to you, not in a way that you feel like, I have to do this. I have to go all in and exercise for 4 hours a day. If I miss a day at the gym, I'm going to beat myself up, that kind of thing. I think specifically for yoga, it's a huge aid to recovery just because it can help you sit with your body and meet yourself where you are, accept yourself without judgment where you are, and move in a way that feels good and gentle and restorative to you.
Yeah, I would agree with all that. And I think, what you said about showing up for yourself, I think that rings really true with helping kind of recover from trauma, I think what fitness can do is I think it can give you some sort of semblance of control, right? Like, especially when it comes to something, I'm going to use CrossFit for an example, but it's one of those things where it, the hard work you put in is what you're going to get back out, right? And like, that's control. Like, you can control, hey, if I want to get better, I can put the work into it and I can make this happen. And I just feel like that's really, really empowering. And I mean, I see this happen with people who are not recovering from trauma by any means, but they've just never really been a fit person. They haven't really ever had a lot of confidence. And they come in and they start doing things they never thought they could do. Like, they start finding muscles on their body. They're like, I didn't even know I had that. And it never fails. But like 3 or 6 months after they join our gym, they end up getting a new job. Right. And it's like, why is that? It's because they're finding confidence that they never thought they had before, and they've just never found. And so, what we do with our classes and stuff like that is we'll have a workout up on the board. And it's usually kind of like, hey, do this workout either as fast as you can, or let's try to see how much work we can get done in like 10 minutes. Right. And then there's a leaderboard. There's pros and cons to all that. But when we put people's scores up on the board, it just gives them something. I think it puts them on level playing field with everyone else. And it shows someone recovering from trauma, like, you're not broken. Like, you're here in this same playing field with these other people. And like, if you beat them that day, you earned it. Like, you did that. Right. And I mean, like I said, there can be pros and cons. You can get obsessed with that kind of stuff. But I do think it helps. It helps a lot of people just kind of feel, I don't know, just feel normal again. So
I like that you touched on control, because that's something that we see a lot with survivors. They've lost that control to their perpetrator. So reclaiming that control does become like a process for them. So yeah, thank you for touching on that. All right. So we always like to end our podcast with this same question. We want to know, what is your message to survivors?
So I just want to say what I'm sure you've heard before, but it's important, so I'll say it again. This was not your fault. If you have been assaulted, if this crime has been committed against you, you did not deserve it. Nothing you did or didn't do, said, didn't say meant that this should have happened. You are imperfect, but you are complete. Everything that you have or have ever wanted, everything that you need is already inside of you. Show up for yourself in little ways. Do what feels good to you. If you need to rest, take rest. Get support. Comparison is the enemy of contentment. So don't look at someone else and say, well, I'm not doing what they're doing, or I'm not doing as well as they are. Recovery is different for everyone. Go at your own pace and be patient with yourself. Show love to yourself in little ways. And I love you. And we at RCEA are here for you.
Good. So me as I kind of identify I identify myself as a Christian, and I believe in the hope of the gospel. And I believe that hope is there for everyone. And so someone recovering from something like that, I've had these conversations with people before, and I constantly go back and I look in scripture, and I see several places throughout all of the Bible where there are these horrific things that God absolutely condemns that have happened. And he says this is evil, and it's evil because it has gone against what I've created before. And God allows these things to happen. We don't know how, but when you look at the story of Joseph in Genesis, where his brothers had left him to die, they've sent him off to prison, basically in Egypt, and he lives in prison. I mean, we're talking 14 years, and he gets out, and God ends up raising him to the head of all of Egypt underneath the Pharaoh. And at the end of Genesis, he says, and he's talking to his brothers, he says, what you meant for evil, God meant for good, right? And the same thing with Job. Like, if we look in the story of Job, God is doing something very deep and very mysterious, and we don't understand. Our ways are not his ways, but he never, ever abandons us. Never. And he always tells us that he's working it out for our good. And, you look at that, ultimate example of that is Jesus on the cross, right? Like completely sinless, innocent, and he suffers. Not only does he suffer, but he dies, and he dies so that we don't have to. And I just want to give that to people as there's hope there that no relationship, no human being is unable. Like God's hand is not shortened towards you. You're not broken enough for him to be able to save you and to redeem you and to heal you. And there's a type of pottery in Japan that they do. It's called kintsugi. I don't know if you guys have heard of this, and I may be pronouncing that wrong. But basically, if a pot breaks, right, what they do with the pot over there is they take gold and silver and they put it with like this lacquer. And what they do is they put it back together. And when you see the pot put back together, it's just this beautiful display of all this gold and silver, just kind of creating this potteriness. The point of it is basically just to say you're more beautiful because you've been broken, and now you've been put back together than if you had never been broken before. And I just think that's a beautiful picture of the gospel. And so that's just what I would say to people.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us on this podcast. Really quick before we head out, I'm going to let Jake plug his podcast as a thank you for joining us. So Jake, if you will add that information real quick.
Yeah, so CrossFit Laminin is our tag on Instagram, Facebook, all that kind of stuff. You can find it. And the podcast is called Lamb, Fam, and Friends. And we just kind of sit around, and it's a lot more, let me just say, informal. We just kind of sit around and just talk about whatever we got in our minds for the day. And it's for our members of our gym. But if you guys happen to want to hear it, or if you're in the Birmingham area and you're looking to start CrossFit or something like that, feel free to reach out to us because we'd love to have you.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, again, thank you guys for joining us so much. And for all of our listeners out there, we will see you guys on the next podcast. Bye.